It's time for Hostel Discourse, episode 14. Now your host, David Rolfing.
Hey everyone, we are back for season 3 of Hostel Discourse. We have some great things planned for our upcoming summer and fall episodes, so make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcasting service so you don't miss out. On today's episode, we will be discussing this weekend's box office champion, Spider-Man Homecoming, as well as debating the controversial question, is Batman a superhero? As always, the time codes will be in the show notes. If you want to skip around, or if you haven't seen Spider-Man yet, we'll let you know when we start talking spoilers and when the debate begins. But before we start, let me introduce you to the crew on this episode, starting with the man sitting next to me in our Tulsa, Oklahoma studio, Jacob Hunter.
Hello.
Welcome back. And you know him, you love him, our Oklahoma City native, Joe Kuiper.
Hello.
And all the way from Fayetteville, Arkansas for the first time, but not the first time on this show, Jared Cozart.
Hey, gang.
And last but not least, our first time guest on the show, Joey Kime from Orlando, Florida.
What's up, y'all?
Whoop. A superhero lover and apparently a Batman hater. We're glad to have you on.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
At the beginning of each season, I like to take a look back at what we've accomplished so far. I went through the previous episodes and wrote down how many debate wins each participant had. Do you guys have any guesses as to who is the most winningest debater on the show?
I know who it is.
Joe Kuiper.
Do you see?
No.
I vote Joe.
It is myself.
It's Jacob.
I'll count down.
It's all lies.
I'll count down from least wins to most. One-time guests Cole, Drake, and Chris are all tied at 1. Sadly, Jared, the regular who's never even been a judge, only has 2 wins.
Yeah, you guys, I think what happens is I come in here as the heavy hitter, and you guys want to mix it up a little bit, which I'm fine with. It's cool, but that's what explains it.
But I'm sure you'll be adding another win to that record today, am I right?
I'm quite sure. I'm quite confident.
But you have won 1 trivia tiebreaker, so that adds a little bit to that.
That counts as 2, I thought.
Yeah. And then I'm next with 4 debate wins and 1 trivia win. And then you're right. Joe is second to first with 5 wins, and Jacob has 6.
Yeah.
I would say I'm going to catch you, but I'm a judge today, so
I know.
No such chance.
That does help a lot, except for the person who's been a judge the least. Jared has the least wins, so I guess it doesn't really matter.
I'd like to be a judge at some point, but
hey, you just focus on getting those W's, you know?
I will. And Joe, might I say, you look astonishingly handsome this evening.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Keep
That's
that in
nice.
mind, when the show's coming to an end.
A rare compliment from Jared. Bribery, one might say.
Okay, let's get into our Spider-Man Homecoming review. It dominated this weekend's box office with 117 million,
Whoa.
which is the highest of any Spider-Man movie in the past. I think the original Spider-Man was at like 113 million, so pretty close, but in first place as of now. What did you guys think overall? We'll start talking spoilers in a little bit, but let's stay at a high-level review. I think, Joey, you saw it last night, so you have the freshest opinion on it. What do you think?
Oh, man. So by and far, I think that was probably the most accurate, maybe true to the original TV show depiction of Spider-Man we've seen. So in my opinion, best Tony Parker we've seen as a token.
Did you say Tony Parker?
Tony Parker.
Tony Parker. No, Peter Parker. I did say Tony
Parker.
However, Tony and Peter were a good duo, so
Yes.
an honest mistake.
Fair enough. But yeah, best Peter Parker we've seen.
I agree with that, Josiah. This guy, Tom Holland, I got a crush on him now, I think. He's pretty freaking cool.
Think he was underage at the time of filming, Jared?
No, he wasn't. He was born in 95.
That's my age.
Fine.
Bang, bang, pow. No, he was awesome. And I'm not as familiar with, I'm not the one that's going to speak on how true to comics or TV shows or anything this character was, but he was the most likable of all the Spider-Mans, I thought. He's what's the first guy's name?
Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, he's no Tobey Maguire dancing in the street.
That's my favorite Spider-Man.
Oh, geez.
Giving the finger guns to all the ladies.
Was that the Venom contaminated version of Peter Parker?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man,
With the hair.
The worst part of any Spider-Man movie, I would say.
His like emo bangs the whole time.
Yeah.
Oof.
So bad.
I liked this movie a lot. It does not overthrow my current favorite Spider-Man movie of all time, which is Amazing Spider-Man 2. It was it was pretty refreshing as far as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It wasn't hustling to build the sequel, and it was special because we had enough of an introduction to the Peter Parker character from Civil War. I guess if you did see that movie before this one, it's fresh. It felt like it was established. It wasn't trying too hard, and it was overall way funnier than I thought it was going to be.
My overall impressions, I definitely was, having read the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, I thought that Peter Parker, Spider-Man, played by Tom Holland, was most true to the comics. I loved him in general. I just thought it was a solid movie overall. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite movie of the year. I'm not even sure if it's my favorite superhero movie of the year. There were some good ones. Wonder Woman, Logan, Guardians of the Galaxy 2. So it had some tough competition, mostly from other Marvel movies. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I was impressed for sure.
I didn't find a lot of the kind of one-liners. I didn't find that funny.
Like when he's fighting people?
No, like that's funny. I love his I don't know, candor, I guess you'd call it like that. But not necessarily his character. Just the scenes in the film that were kind of supposed to be to get a laugh. I think most of the time I just didn't find them very funny.
Do you think it was Tom Holland's acting, or do you think it was the writing that was hindering that?
Don't get me wrong. Tom Holland, I love him. He's funny. He's great. What a guy, okay?
You might say he's attractive, huh, Jared?
Oh, very, very much so. I'm not talking about him, his lines or his writing. I'm talking about like just other places in the movie, like with his buddy or sometimes the teachers. No, yeah, it wasn't Tom. I love Tom, but other things I just didn't find very funny.
So you probably didn't think like the high school news reporters were very funny.
No, I mean they were like all right.
I thought those were so funny.
They were all right. Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was a good enough movie without making me laugh very hard. But I did not laugh very hard.
If you haven't seen it, we're going to start talking spoilers now. So that's your warning. Look in the show notes. You can skip to the debate, but now we can talk some dirty deets.
Yeah. I think the funniest part of the movie was probably he shows up to Liz's house for homecoming, and it's the Vulture.
That was funny to you?
Yeah, that's not funny.
It was hilarious.
I thought that was
y'all didn't think that was funny?
I thought
that
it was
the
a
most
great
tense
reveal.
part of the movie.
Yeah, I
that was a really
That's
serious,
hilarious.
though.
That's funny that y'all think that and that we differ so greatly.
I don't think I laughed for the next 10 minutes.
I don't think anyone laughed when the Vulture opened the door. He's like,
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like he's standing there having to take pictures. He's looking so anguished.
Oh, yeah, I get what you're saying.
And the funniest part of that whole sequence, he's in the car and Liz leans over. She like sees something cute on her phone. She's like, "Oh, look at this." And he looks at it and he's like, "Oh, super cute." And then just like looks back up like and just the smile goes away. I thought it like I could empathize as someone who's been on homecoming dates where you're just thinking about other stuff. You don't really like your date that much, or you know, like date leans over and like shows you something on the phone. Like I've done that exact same thing before.
I hope Jacob's old prom dates are listening to this right now.
Hey, Tal, it's me. I won't say the name. Yeah, I mean that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie. That whole twist. I didn't think it was funny necessarily. I mean, it was kind of like awkward humor, I guess. Like it made you uncomfortable laughing. But I just thought it was a great twist in general. I didn't see that coming at all, that they were going to be connected. I was wondering how the Vulture and Spider-Man were going to be connected because they didn't put them together in the movie until pretty far on, I guess, besides the one fighting scene out of the warehouse. But great twist right there.
I had a question / complaint. At that point, when they're in the car, is that when he realizes that Spider-Man is Peter Parker?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
So before that, he didn't know.
Nope.
Right.
Correct.
Okay,
Although
then someone explain to me Explain to me how his henchman was outside the door literally 4 minutes after Peter Parker got out of the car.
Okay, I assumed he knew that, like, he threatened Peter and told him to not mess with his stuff, with his business anymore. I think he assumed Peter was still going to leave prom, or homecoming, and he called in one of his henchmen. But
was his henchman just like, luckily he was 3 minutes away and could like get to the door really quick? I mean,
apparently so, Joe. That's what happened.
The time frame didn't make any sense to me.
I assumed that when he dropped Peter off and gave him the talk at the outside the dance, he immediately called his dude and was like, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, go outside and make sure he doesn't get out of here. So, yeah, it was a little quick that the guy was there out the back door immediately when he went out there. But, I mean,
yeah,
you know, there were probably some edits.
They also were just about to do the Avengers Tower heist. It would make sense that
he was close by.
Yeah, he told his crew where he was going to be and where he was going to be leaving from.
That's always been my biggest complaint with movies, is when they like have something that you could easily just, you know, extend a little bit so the time actually makes sense. Like when a bomb's going to go off and there's like, oh, there's 20 seconds left, and then like 50 seconds of movie time later they stop it. I don't know. It just seems like a really easy thing to fix. But yeah, you're probably right. I agree.
Yeah. Well, you should watch 24.
Yeah, that's
Was the Vulture in general like a compelling villain for you guys?
He was compelling for me. I liked him because of the scale of his villainry.
The small scale, you mean?
Yeah, the small scale, yeah. He's he's not trying to destroy the universe or anything. He's just trying to make some money to support his daughters. That was one of the couple things about this movie that was kind of refreshing in the superhero genre, was its smaller scale.
I liked it, but the one scene I didn't like was when he vaporizes the one guy, and then he's like, oh, I thought that was the anti-gravity gun. To me, it seems like that would be the first time he'd ever actually killed somebody.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
He was very nonchalant about it. Like, I thought he should have been a little bit more sad, or like, I don't know, surprised, but.
Yeah, considering that was like the first evil thing they showed him doing, it was a little strange that was his reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a little weird too. But I agree with Jared. The overall, like, smallish scale of the Vulture and what he was doing compared to villains in the Avengers or other superhero movies was really refreshing. Like, it's more relatable, like a guy distributing guns to a gang in New York as opposed to some demigod trying to destroy the world. So that was refreshing. I agree with you, Jared.
Was that a plug at Wonder Woman or something?
It was a plug at most superhero movies.
Okay, so my one complaint, though, is didn't it say they had like 8 years from the time they like got the alien weaponry and began actually like the whole story unfolding?
Yeah.
Like, how in all that time did they not realize the pink stuff was explosive? Like, in all the guns they made and all the stuff they did, why was that something that Peter was able to figure out? But they've been working with it for 8 years and only then shut up later.
That's a good point.
I assume they did know that those purple ovals were explosive because they were making weapons out of them, right?
Yeah,
but it seemed like it caught him off guard at the end of the scene with the, when Vulture's trying to fly off with the case.
Oh.
And Peter's the one that's like, wait, no.
Huh. Blinded by rage, I guess.
He really wanted that box, you know?
It was that was kind of, I kind of like got chills a little bit. He goes into the plane and it's like a box full of arc reactors. I don't know. That's like, that's what powers Iron Man's suit. That's like the coolest thing in the whole, I don't know, it's the coolest thing man made in those movies. But I like what Jared said, because that's basically my favorite part about Spider-Man, is that he's small scale. And I think even this movie pushed that limit of a national, he became like a national villain, the Vulture. Like he started taking on the Avengers, at least indirectly. I really like when Spider-Man stays just New York. And that's why, like, that montage at the beginning of the movie where he's just like stopping small crimes and stuff, it was my favorite part of the movie by far. And I was just like smiling the whole time. An absolute pleasure to watch, I thought.
I loved when he stuck the guy's hand to the car thinking he was stealing it, and it was the guy's car.
Yes. Oh, that's so funny.
The neighborhood got all mad.
Good. Yeah, and on top of him, like, it being a smaller scale story in general, the fact that he was actually 19 when they filmed this movie. So listen to this. Andrew Garfield was 28 when he shot Incredible Spider-Man, playing a high schooler. I guess he graduated in the movie, but still. And Tobey Maguire was 27 when he played.
Oh, I didn't
Spider-Man.
know. I didn't know Andrew Garfield was older.
Yeah, he looks younger, but he was a year older. And Andrew Garfield in the movie is like riding around his school on a skateboard. He's like way too cool than Peter Parker is supposed to be. This kid was actually, he's a cool actor, but they made him actually seem nerdy. He was in what was the club called?
Academic decathlon?
Yeah, decathlon.
Well, he went to the science school anyway.
That's true. The fact that all the students were actually teenagers really helped out this movie and seemed more realistic compared to the other ones.
Liz's actor is 28.
Seriously?
Wow.
Yeah. I think actually the supporting cast might be super old. I'm going to Google some.
Wow. Well, at least the main actor is a teenager.
Yeah, for real.
Now he's like 22, I think. But
The other part of the small scale kind of aspect of it is this kind of underdog aspect. I was reading an article on The Ringer about this movie, and they pointed out that as he rolls up to school for the first time, a song called Underdog is playing on his mom's radio, or his aunt's radio, sorry. And, like, it takes place in Queens, not in Manhattan, so it's kind of an underdog, like, part of New York, you could say. I like the way that adds to the kind of fringe, and it also goes hand in hand with how he's kind of the fringe Avenger at this point. So I like that a lot too.
The sweatsuit. What'd y'all think of the homemade suit he wears for like the last fight?
Oh, it was sweet.
it's just like a hoodie he puts goggles over the hoodie.
I love that so much. That's so cool.
What did you guys think about the ending where he was going to be offered to be an Avenger and then turned it down?
Oh, I gasped when I saw that suit.
Oh.
And that's what you're talking about, though, Jared. Like, when I saw that scene, I was like, uh-oh, Spider-Man's getting too big right now. And then, like, you see it in his face. He's about to turn down. It's like a relief. Like, yes, this is good.
You know, but I think the whole movie is building up to this, like, it's building him. You're realizing, or he's self-realizing, I'm not necessarily there yet. Everything from, like, chasing the van around the neighborhood, and he's just, like, flying into everything on the street, to then doing he tries to, like, intimidate the guy in the garage to get, he tries to do the shakedown. And even the guy's like, dude, this is part of your job. Like, you got to do it. And I think you're watching him realize, I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, the whole parental feel of the relationship with him and Tony and him and Happy, I thought was great. Especially Happy at the beginning of the movie. He was really treating him like his son and, like, scolding him and putting him in his place when he should be. And I just loved, that whole kind of, like, coaching aspect of Tony and Peter really worked for me. Also, you mentioned the Childish Gambino scene in the parking garage.
Mm-hmm.
There were 3 cameos that I noticed. When he attached the guy's hand to his car and then Stan Lee was shouting out the window. I'm sure everybody noticed that one.
Right.
The actor that plays Guilfoyle in Silicon Valley was the decathlon teacher, which was great. And then Childish Gambino, a little Easter egg about that.
You mean Lando?
He mentioned... That's not what I was going to say, but yes, he is going to play Lando. So his character was named Aaron Davis in this movie. He mentioned having a nephew that lives in Queens, and the Easter egg is that nephew is named Miles Morales, who was Spider-Man in a different version of the comics after Peter Parker died.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Well, that Peter Parker is white in my Ultimate Spider-Man comics.
He dies.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get that far. But the Spider-Man that replaces him is this black kid from Queens named Miles Morales, and his uncle was played by Childish Gambino.
Which is also kind of funny because when, like, The Amazing Spider-Man was in the works, Donald Glover did, like, a Twitter campaign to try to get himself cast as Spider-Man. He
said, I want to be Spider-Man. And so they obviously didn't make him Spider-Man, but this is what came out of that tweet, was him playing this little Easter egg character.
Did you see this? Anything about, like, the big comic book moment that was in kind of the ending climax?
Like him pushing this rubble off of him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at this right now. It's from Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, Issue 33. Supposedly, like, a really iconic Spider-Man moment. Basically exactly what it is in the movie when he's, like, stuck underneath the destroyed building and he has to lift all of that rubble off of his back.
Yeah, they took that straight out of that comic strip. It's like the same imagery and everything.
Yeah.
One of the shots.
That actually brings up a point that I really liked about the movie, and that was when he had the really cool suit on and he was figuring out all the stuff. It was kind of getting to the point, for me at least, where I was like, mostly he's just using Tony Stark's technology. And then when he gets it taken away and he says the line, like, I'm nothing without the suit, I thought that was really cool. And then the fact that he did that where he lifted it off himself. And like when he's looking in the reflection, he hears Tony say that, like, you need to be more than just a suit. I thought that was awesome and kind of brought out what I think is the difference between a superhero and not a superhero, but we'll get to that later. So,
well, good transition, Joe, because I think it's time to wrap up this discussion and continue on to our debate segment. The debate question is, which I stated before, is Batman a superhero? We have discussed this in real life, like a lot of our debates we bring to the show. Jared and I are on the side of Batman is most definitely a superhero. Joe will be our judge. Joey and Jacob are pulling for the opposite side of that argument. I put out a little survey on our social media accounts to see what people thought, and 75% of people thought that Batman was a superhero. So if that shows you anything, me and Jared have the support from our audience.
And I bet the sample size was significant.
Yes. Millions.
Despite the poll, I'm not going to let that influence my judgment. It'll be based on the arguments. But that is a fun fact.
All right, Judge, start us off.
All right. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter which side wants to go first. So we'll hear from the side that is most favored by the audience and hear from why he is a superhero.
All right. Big D, I'll start and then you jump in, okay, whenever.
Sounds good.
Big D and I think Batman is a superhero by many standards. We're going to prove to you that he meets the definition of a superhero. We're going to prove to you that he actually does that with a couple of different definitions. And I think that should be enough. So let's start with the definition of a superhero. We say it's something like this. A being who possesses superhuman powers and who uses them to fight crime or otherwise help people in a way normal people or heroes can't do. I think you might find that word superhuman particularly interesting, especially our opponents. We think that our opponents will say that Batman is not superhuman because he has no special superpowers. However, we think that what makes a comic book superhero super is not whether they have powers within their own universe, but whether they have powers relative to the actual universe, our world. In other words, could this character exist in today's world? If they can, then they can't be considered a superhero. But if they can't, that's where the superness comes from. And so we can get into details on why Batman wouldn't fit in today's world later, but that is the first premise. We think that should pretty much end it. However, if our opponents insist on pushing maybe a different definition, then we think we can prove that he meets those as well. Big D, you want to take over?
You took the words right out of my mouth,
Bang.
baby. I think that's our opening statement. We'll let you go.
All right, let's hear why he is not a superhero.
Jacob, you want to start us off?
I'd love to. I'm surprised at how much we agree on already. I think there is some clear inherent differences to both of our arguments that we're going to have to work through. But I think it is a defining quality of Batman that he is not a superhero. It is basically the point of his character as a hero, considering the context that he works in within the Justice League and a lot of like the really important stories that character has been through. And the fact that he does not have superhuman powers excludes him from being considered a superhero. I think this is a pretty clear distinction, and I think comic book writers would agree with me in qualifying him as only a hero without the superhuman distinction.
I'm happy your definition of superhero.
Well, Joey has to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna let that go for right now.
Rebuttals. Let's hear them.
I'm surprised that you mentioned superhuman and that Batman is not a superhuman. Because I think we should start to try to lay down some definition of superhero, which we might agree upon, we might not. Would you agree that a superhero is a superhuman hero?
If by superhuman you mean...
I'll give you my definition of superhuman.
Yeah.
Superhuman, having or showing exceptional ability or powers above or beyond what is human, having a higher nature or greater powers than humans have.
Right. Okay, I feel like that was 3 things, and the last 2 I more firmly agree with. I think just using the word extraordinary, I don't think that describes what a superhero is.
Well, this is describing superhuman, not superhero.
Sorry, yeah, but by proxy.
Okay, well, that's the dictionary definition of superhuman, having or showing exceptional abilities or powers. I think Batman shows exceptional abilities and powers that are impossible in the actual world. We can go into specific examples. Jared, I think you had some.
Well, I still don't agree with using just the word exceptional or extraordinary. A superhuman can do things that it is impossible for an unenhanced human. Like, it is beyond the physical limits of what the human body can perform.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. So we're
Okay.
very okay with that. But what we're saying is that you're measuring superhuman within the context of Batman's own comic book universe. And you're saying that within his universe, he is in fact only a human. He possesses no superpowers. However, that's not why we feel like Batman's a superhero. That's not why, that's not what we think makes a superhero. We think it's relative to our own world. Batman can't exist in our world. And there's not a human that can do what Batman can do, alive today. There's not the technology that can do it either. That's where the superness comes from. So we agree on the definition of superhuman, and relative to actual humans, comic book Batman is most definitely superhuman.
If he's a superhuman, which we think he is, he's also a hero because he's dedicated his life to combating criminals and villains. So if he's a superhuman and a hero, he is a superhero.
Right. We should only have to convince you of, I would assume, of the superhuman part. The hero part, I assume we're all good on. He's a hero, right? But the question is the superhuman. And so we think you're framing it the wrong way in the beginning, to think that because he possesses no superpowers in his own universe, that's what makes him a superhero. We disagree. That's the wrong place to start.
Okay, so I think all of us are square in terms of the hero aspect. But I think what Jacob and I are trying to say is that that's basically where we want to leave it. I mean, at some point, this is going to get down to a lot of gray in between these, like, kind of definitive terms, especially when just, like, throwing out words like extraordinary or powers or superhuman, or because you could look up definitions all day long and you're going to kind of get shades of different ones. But I think one of the ones we stumbled upon, especially when referring to like a superhero or what would actually kind of explain like the superness of it, is talking about, one of them said even possessing extraordinary or even like magical powers, something that kind of talks about something that's just nothing even fathomable for a human being as a whole. And I think that's going to kind of prevent us from, I don't know, so just getting down to like superhuman and talking about what powers are and all that kind of stuff. I think we're just going to end up running in circles with definitions.
Yeah. I'd like to test you guys' framework if I can.
Please.
Sure.
First, I'd like to hear some examples of Batman being superhuman by your standard.
Yeah.
Understanding that I'm expecting to hear some things that would literally be impossible for any human conceivably possible on Earth to do.
Okay, one thing I'll change in what you just said is conceivably possible for a human to do in today's world. Okay? 1,000,000 years down the road, a Batman or an Iron Man may very well exist. And at that time, they will no longer be superheroes in the comic book world. However, in today's world, we say Batman can exist. So here's some things he does that no human today could do. He uses an Iron Man-like suit. He defies physics with his grappling gun use. Jacob, I remember you pointed out to me one time after watching Batman vs. Superman how much you liked seeing Batman move with his grappling hook because he would have to be that fast to really be Batman. It's physics defying. It wouldn't work on Earth. At least not today. Maybe at some point in the future.
Okay, I'd like to stop you because those two examples they're not tests of human ability. They are instead tests of the physics in the realm that the character is in. Like the Iron Man suit, like you're saying if you had the suit, it would be impossible for a person to use it?
No, I'm saying that no person can use an Iron Man suit in today's world.
Okay, but that's not speaking to the human abilities of Bruce Wayne.
It's speaking to the heroic actions that these people do, right? Like
you're just arguing that an Iron Man suit doesn't exist. Basically,
because the heroic gumption would still be possessed by people today just as much as they might be in 50 years.
Yeah, that's you're not making a point about abilities that Batman possesses. That you're making points about the technology that exists in the story.
His abilities are enhanced by that impossible technology, though.
That doesn't make him superhuman.
Because it's the suit that's actually giving him his tool. Like, if his suit is the only reason he's superhuman.
Even when he's not in his Iron Man-like suits, which he has used in many different comics and movies, different types of suits, the one he fought Superman with in Batman v Superman. Even if he hasn't used those, Jared mentioned his use of the grappling hook in crazy ways, how super fast it is. Nobody would be able to swing with a grappling hook like that. Another example of his physical prowess and like impossibility. There's a comic that shows him bench pressing 1,000 pounds. The world record today is 1,075 pounds assisted. So that's with a special belt strap thing that assists you pushing it up. Nobody's benched 1,000 pounds without assistance in today's world. Even at that level, Batman is superhuman as far as his strength is concerned. So that's one level of his superhumanness naturally. But I think the rest of the technology he uses and the ways he's shown using them all show how he's superhuman also. So do you think that a superhero that uses technology like Iron Man or Cyborg or Green Arrow or Batman, do you not think that any of these people are superheroes?
None of them.
Because they just use technology?
Correct.
And
I think that is like, I don't think that's radical by any standards. I think that's like always a factor in these characters and their stories. It is the fact that they are not inherently superhuman and they are easily detached from their the things that make them perform superhuman tasks. And I'd still like to say that when Jared mentioned my statements about the grappling hook in the Batman v Superman movie, I still think that is the extraordinary quality of that kind of element of the Batman action in that movie. It's still about the physics. Like, it's crazy that a grappling hook like that would exist, not the fact that he can point it and shoot it. But I also don't want to go too far back. If you're willing to say that the probability of a person on Earth being able to bench press 1,000 pounds is 0, I'll disagree with you, but...
What do you mean? It doesn't exist. Nobody's done it before.
I think
you can't disagree with that fact.
There's a little bit of a flaw in the argument of just saying, because he's so strong, he can do this superhuman feat and grapple around, because comics also depicted Robin and Batgirl doing the same thing. And by no means were they like superhuman of any kind. And so we're looking at, like basically like a elementary or middle school age boy and maybe like a high school, college age girl doing the same thing. So clearly, like, in their world, it had really nothing to do with like any sort of strength as much as it was just kind of like part of the storyline.
The technology is exaggerated and does not exist like what we see in the comic books or the cartoons or the movies, but that cannot be a direct reflection on the human abilities that we see the heroes.
I was just say, like, even on that point, I'm happy to disagree, because I really don't think it takes some innate quality to perform deeds that could not be performed in today's world. So whenever we see Iron Man flying around in his suit, he sure feels like a superhero. And I think he is one, because he's doing things that can't be done in today's world, regardless of whether it's innate or whether it's using technology. It doesn't matter. He's doing heroic deeds, just in absolute terms. He's doing heroic deeds that can't be done in today's world. And that's how we define a superhero. And so I have no problem with Batman being dependent on using his suits to be considered a superhuman compared to actual humans.
I don't think that Joey and Jacob are going to budge on their stance of comparing Batman to other superheroes in his universe and not to our world like we are.
Right.
But I think we need to convince the judge that we're right. And by doing that, I'm going to quote comic book writers who Jacob says agree with him on their stance, and Stan Lee. Stan Lee defines a superhero as, quote, a person who does heroic deeds and has the ability to do them in a way that a normal person couldn't. Head of Marvel TV, Jeff Loeb, says, quote, they're people with powers and abilities beyond those of mortal men who make a choice to use them to help those who need it. And lastly, former Marvel editor-in-chief Joe Quesada says, superheroes are extraordinary people placed under extraordinary circumstances who manage to do extraordinary things to ultimately triumph over evil. Those are all very high up individuals in the comic world, the Marvel world, whose definitions all would point to the fact of superhumans being super because they can do things that normal people cannot. Every single one of them says something similar in those definitions.
Right, and
that's actually exactly what we are arguing.
Yeah.
But the only difference is you're saying in the world of the superhero.
Yeah, and those quotes don't really speak to that either. And if you just want to go by like saying extraordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, it's fine, but you open yourself up to saying like, okay, firefighters are superheroes.
Okay, exactly. So this is why we feel like our first definition we presented is the right one to go by, because it takes superhuman ability. A firefighter or a Navy SEAL is a hero, but they're a regular hero because they exist in our world. It gives us a very close to objective measure. The only loss of like objectivity comes when we maybe can't measure if something could actually happen in today's world. But it gives us a really good standard by which to judge who is a superhero and who isn't. So Navy SEALs, firefighters, they're heroes, but they're not super because they exist in today's world. Batman, Iron Man, they're superheroes because they can't exist in today's world. And so we think that our definition like suffices for that problem, but also speaks to the actually why we feel like these people, like these heroes are super in the first place. Like Batman feels to me, maybe he doesn't feel to you guys, he feels to me like a superhero. Iron Man feels like a superhero. But I think you guys have reasoned yourself out of that feeling because he doesn't have superpowers. But I think our definition confirms the feeling by framing where this superness comes from differently, and we think correctly.
And the superness and superhero we've both agreed upon comes from superhuman and not superpowers.
Right, exactly.
No. That we agreed that it was superpowers.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, that's what I was saying too. Because I felt like that definition, talking about like kind of the magical nature of it, or maybe the alien nature of it, is what makes it super, not just a power.
We agreed that it was something that is impossible for a human being to do.
Exactly.
Without an enhancement.
And I think what you find in most origin stories, in any of the superheroes' origin stories, at some point and somehow you find out how or why they became a super kind of, like whether it was Wonder Woman or Superman or the Flash, like there was some event or something that took place which made them, and they, from, beginning of time, they knew they were different. And it wasn't just because they stumbled upon some tech, such as Iron Man or Green Lantern or somebody like that.
Okay, but let's back up for a second. Jacob says that we establish, or that his definition of a superhero requires, you're saying it requires superhumanness. You're saying it requires being able to do things that humans can't do. And we agree, we have to bring it back to the framing of it. You think it's framed within the world, within the comic book universe. We think it's relative to our actual universe. And we're not going to convince you of this, but for the judge, please note that this is what we're saying, okay?
It is noted.
Okay.
And I'd like to confirm that 100 years ago, 70 years ago, when it was impossible to drive a personal vehicle over 100 miles an hour, the idea of someone being able to do that like you could today, that was superhuman at the time?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. If it were put in a comic book and if this guy's thing was driving 100 miles an hour to rescue kittens out of trees, he would be a superhero.
Okay. So you're saying Batman is a superhero now, 50 years later might not be.
He might not be, that's right. But
Okay.
in today's world, no Batman can exist. And that's what makes him super.
And also, like, still only heard one example, and it's saying that he bench presses 1,000 pounds, and you're basically saying there is absolutely no possibility that no person in the history of Earth has ever bench pressed 1,000 pounds.
Okay, hey, don't get so focused on the 1,000 pounds, because he still does deeds that nobody on Earth can do today. And that's the point. Okay, whether it's bench pressing 1,000 pounds, whether it's rescuing Rachel from a falling 80-story building and catching her 40 stories down, and somehow they land on a car and nobody is hurt. He does things that can't be done today. That's the point.
I think we need to, Jared, go over some more of Batman, Bruce Wayne's abilities.
All right, yeah.
Because bench pressing 1,000 pounds is only scratching the surface.
All right, go for it.
First from DCComics.com, under powers for Batman, it says, exceptional martial artist, combat strategy, inexhaustible wealth, brilliant detective skill, advanced technology. All listed under powers, canon from DC Comics. Those other abilities that we haven't talked about, such as his detective skill, are his mental capacity, I would say, is superhuman. It's beyond what a normal human could accomplish. And his martial artist abilities are beyond what a normal human could accomplish. The Scientific American magazine, the longest published magazine in the U.S., founded in 1845, did a study on Batman and said it would take 18 years to reach his level of combat skills and strength in martial arts. That's it if you did that all day, every day, full time. They also researched boxers and MMA fighters and came to the conclusion that he would only be able to take 2 to 3 years of beatings that he does in Batman canon before his body gave out from the head trauma. In one of the comics, Bruce Wayne said that he could keep up being Batman for 27 years before his body gave out. This shows superhuman ability to take brain damage.
2 to 3 years of just getting smacked in the head by Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I mean, Batman takes so much damage in his fights, but he keeps going, which is definitely a superhuman ability, especially if Bruce estimates 27 years of being able to take that, 9 times what this scientific study found. That is one of his superhuman abilities.
So far, that is the only superhuman ability you have presented. The Scientific magazine even confirms that it would take years, but it is still possible to have that mastery of martial arts.
I think I have one that might convince you. Who's the most powerful Marvel character? Hulk, right?
Oh, yeah, probably.
Okay. In an 80s crossover comic, Batman defeated the Incredible Hulk in a fight by using chemicals to weaken him, and he defeated him by kicking him once in the stomach. The Hulk. Super strength, pretty much.
Okay, that is not good evidence because it does not clarify how much the Hulk was weakened. The chemicals that you say he used are also not, again, like earlier, they're not assessments of Batman's human ability. The way, like, all that tells me is that the chemicals must have weakened him to a point that he could have been defeated by a kick in the stomach.
The combination of Batman's strategy to defeat people plus his innate abilities and technology is what makes him so super, and being able to compete with other superhumans that are more powerful than him. I think it's pretty common comic book knowledge that Batman had a method for defeating each member of the Justice League easily when he was in the Justice League. That includes Superman, Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman, people that are a lot more powerful than he is. But the combination of his smartness, his strategy to defeat them, if he can beat people in fights like the Hulk, I guess he's a Marvel character, so it's a little weird, but it was a crossover comic. It's still canon.
Honestly, no, it's the most bogus comic series that's crossovers.
Well, even so, his natural intellect is for sure superhuman. He's able to create technology that doesn't exist in our world, that nobody else has, in the DC universe, he designed the Justice League satellite home base tower. Like, even if you just looked at his intellect, I would say that that's superhuman.
Yeah, but I think, and Jacob, maybe you could totally argue this too, because we haven't really talked about this one. But one thing that I was just thinking about was, I think when you really like look at like superheroes, and I mean like even like the big names, like the, you know, Superman, Wonder Woman, they had villain counterparts way before Justice League or Super Friends was ever a thing. They all had villains that were kind of pertained to their genre of expertise and kind of matched their ability sets. And I think when you look at like kind of like the canon Batman villains, he was always just dealing with other humans.
That's not true.
Well, albeit highly sadistic humans, but anybody from the Joker to Mr. Freeze to even someone like Bane are just people.
He also had, there was like a lizard type, reptile bad guy,
a mutant,
not
just
human.
like the Man-Bat, like from the original Batman the Animated Series first episode. They were all like kind of like mutations gone wrong via chemicals,
Joey,
which might actually turn them into superhumans.
Yeah, exactly.
Similar to Flash. But nothing like that ever happened to Batman. There was no event that turned him from human to superhuman, nor was he born a superhuman.
I would say the focus and motivation he got from his parents' death and the bat situation, whatever that was, they changed it a lot. But that is what gave him the drive to push himself to become the Batman, who is a superhero. So I think there was a couple events, the death of his parents and the bat incident.
And Joey, I don't think this is a very important point at all, but I think it's pretty deceiving to say that Batman doesn't have superhuman villains. Like, just because Wolverine is a mutant and it doesn't make him not a superhuman, just because Bane is a mutant, basically, doesn't make him not superhuman when he's got venom running through his veins. So I don't think that point matters that much at all, but
like really like kind of like consider the different Batman villains. I don't think you come across anybody with any sort of like extraordinary unmatched power of any kind.
Batman has defeated Superman, the Hulk, Catwoman, Captain America, Green Arrow, Lex Luthor. I mean, half of those are definitely superhumans. He's defeated Superman a few times.
Yeah, but he used something like kryptonite, which is nothing that no other human couldn't do.
If you look at the ways he defeated the Justice League, it's honestly, I think, poor writing. It's just shoehorned magical technology that exists within the comic book universe they're working in. He shoots the Flash in the back.
All right.
These are not genius devices. He just divines from his superhuman intellect. The comics have never been able to actually express an instance of Batman's genius intellect in the way that you guys are describing it, or how some crazy diehard Batman fan would want you to believe it exists.
Okay, to the villain thing, I would keep pointing out that many of Batman's villains aren't other humans. Like I would keep arguing that's a deceiving statement, but it's not worth it because who Batman's villains are prove nothing about his own superhumanness.
Well, I mean that in the way that the character was created and written, and how their original solo comic books would have been, the storylines were derived from. They, every hero had their set of villains, which is what made comic book series like Justice League of America, or even the TV shows like Justice League so interesting, was that you're kind of watching all these villains come together. But the original Batman villains were created to go along with another human.
Yeah, sometimes modified to make them very not human. But here's the point. Batman's villains do nothing to change the fact that Batman could not exist in today's world. And that's what makes him superhuman, and that's what makes him a superhero. And so the villains thing doesn't really matter.
I agree with you, and to the opposite end.
Same.
I think that actually the opponents that Batman faces, there's never been one that he's faced that is actually impossible for a human to actually take down, as proof by the fact that he actually does take them down because he's just a human with no superpowers.
All right. Here's what I want to happen. We're going to do final statements, and how we're going to do it is you each pick one person from your team to give a really short summary of what you think is your best argument. And then we're going to have the other person from each team give a rebuttal against what the other team said. Okay. So it's kind of like one from each team will go, and then the other person from each team will go. That makes sense?
Getting fancy with it, Joseph.
So you can pick who goes first for each.
Big D, what do you think?
I'll end with maybe not just this quote, but starting off with this quote. This is from another former Marvel comic book writer. Robin Hood lives in an otherwise realistic world, and aside from being extremely skilled with a bow, isn't superhuman. And there's no other superhumans in this world. With Batman, it's easier to say he's a superhero because there are superhumans around. There's an understanding that in that milieu, in that world, characters who do what Batman does are superheroes. So I think you just have to look at the whole world of DC. The fact that there are other people in that world that are mutants, that have superhuman abilities, helps point us in the right direction that Batman also has superhuman abilities, even if some of them are a little hard to discern compared to Superman, who's obviously more superhuman than Batman. Batman is for sure a superhuman. So, okay. Yeah.
I'll start. It is extremely evident in any Batman story that you decide to read or watch or listen to that he is a human without superhuman abilities. It is the crux of all of the struggles that he faces, and it is so clearly defined and reiterated throughout every DC comic that he's a part of. He is a man with no superpowers, and that is why it is all the more impressive that he is able to take down villains or heroes that have superhuman abilities. That does not make him superhuman. That just proves the abilities that a human can have without supernatural enhancements. We don't have to force ourselves into reasoning that aligns with what we feel about the character of Batman when it's so obvious based on just what we've been told through the stories that it's okay that these lines can be drawn, and if anything, they just further exalt the abilities of humans and they're evidence to our species' ingenuity and creativity and strength. So I'll leave it there. It is clear that Batman is not a superhero.
Okay, I'll take the rebuttal then.
All right, Jared, rebut that.
Okay, your entire argument is based on this idea that he has no superpowers, okay? And David's and my view is that you guys take the wrong frame to begin with, okay? A comic book superhero is not determined to be super because of any particular superpowers within his own realm. Rather, he or she is determined to be super relative to our world that exists today. And so here's an important thing. Batman feels like a superhero. Like he just feels like a superhero. And you guys have reasoned yourself out of it, but our feeling is correct, okay? And so instead of reasoning yourself out of it by saying he has no superpowers, trust your instinct, trust your feeling, young Padawan, and realize that he's super only because no human alive can do what he does. And the hero part's obvious. Thus, Batman is, we think, clearly a superhero.
Okay, Joey, bring it home.
All right. So, I mean, you got to start off again talking about the powers, and then kind of wrapped it with, he just, like, the aura of him feels like one, whether that be because he exists in the DC world with other heroes or not. But I think you're really only offering like a subjective definition as to why you think he's a hero. And Jake and I have been trying to kind of like logically push the definitions and go with what I think 99% of people would first deem logical with the definition of super and human or superhero together. And that is to immediately begin to talk about what kind of special powers or what makes them different from the rest of the superhero group. And I think that keeps leading you back to, like, kind of like Jacob said, the crux of Batman is that he is just a human kind of on the same team. And while he's still fighting for the same purposes, and while he's still obviously like pulling off some pretty amazing feats, both as a part of the team and on his own, in Gotham, I think there's nowhere in like the definition of the Justice League or whatever that says that it's only a group of superheroes. And so I think just to keep saying that he feels like one is really, like I said, it goes back to just kind of being a subjective feeling about it, but not actually based on the definition of what a superhero is.
Boom, it's in your hands, Judge.
Oh, man.
We love you so much.
Well, I think you guys all did a pretty decent job arguing your points.
Pretty decent job. I don't like where this is going.
Obviously, when I came into this argument, I had some preconceived notions. And, well, yeah, you each made a lot of good points. I thought about listing them off, but that seems silly. So, basically, I think that the winner of this debate, and maybe the fans will disagree, but I believe that the winner was that Batman is a superhero.
Yes.
That is the most...
Yes!
Joe,
Yes!
I think Joe just doesn't want
job,
Jacob
Jared.
to keep going up higher on the scoreboard.
I love that.
I knew
No,
we
but
would
that is
sway.
a nice side effect.
You want to break that down a little bit?
Okay, so that being said, my own opinions on the matter have not changed. I think the arguments you guys made were really good, and you did a good job rebutting some. For instance, the villains argument. I get what you were trying to say, and at first I was pretty impressed by the point, but I think they also brought up some points about how, I mean, Bane is pretty superhuman, Poison Ivy's pretty superhuman. I mean, these are people that have abilities that I think you would call superhuman. So I like the idea that he was fighting people that weren't superhuman, so he's not superhuman, but I don't know if that is necessarily true. And the other thing, I think when David brought up the study, and Jacob, you kind of replied with, that's the only superhuman thing you've said, but you didn't say why it wasn't superhuman. And I mean, even if there's only one thing that makes Batman superhuman, and it's that he can take a beating, I mean, that still kind of makes him a superhero. So the fact that you didn't argue against that maybe hurt a little bit, but regardless, you can hate me for it, but I think that is my decision.
Yay!
Woohoo! Joe, you've done it tonight, my friend. You have done it tonight.
Also, I'm curious, do you guys think Green Lantern is a superhero?
No.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
We had to talk about it earlier.
They think everybody's a superhero. So
Yeah, it's the same.
Don't
It would be
even
the
ask them
same
that
argument
anymore.
for us. I did some research on Green Lantern today and looked at like either like how the ring picks him or kind of like what connection the ring has to Green Lantern to see if there's anything about him. But everything I was finding was talking about how the ring itself can actually act out on all by its own. So has nothing to do with Hal Jordan or Kyle Rayner or any of them.
Yeah.
I think that you guys probably would say that Captain America isn't a superhero either, right? Because he is legit at the peak level of human ability in their world.
That's the way they define it. So yeah, he's not.
So he's not. Batman has more stuff going for him than Captain America does because he's at peak human level too.
Yeah,
Except
like,
without the steroid. Or no, he does take steroids in one of the comics.
Yeah. See, okay, if I was going to argue against the head trauma thing, that was such a weird point, by the way.
Thank you.
I would
straight out of left field.
I know. I would have to. I would say like first you have to consider which Batman is speaking because the way Batman can be operating can be so different between comic series and. If you take the most brutal Batman and apply that quote to him, yeah, it might not work, but maybe that quote came from a story of it where it's a much more reserved character. I don't know. That might be a stretch, but I basically would just ask you to believe that it is actually physically impossible and the probability of him being able to be Batman for 27 years would be 0.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it meant that he is Batman without ever facing combat.
I went back and forth a lot in this argument, so by no means was it a blowout. It was definitely close, but
Sounds like a blowout.
Joe, you have some trivia prepared to decide the overall episode winner,
that's right.
correct?
That's right. So it's going to be between David and Jared.
What kind of
I've got
trivia
a
is this?
series of questions here, and the first person to give me the answer correctly will get that point. First person to 3 points will win, okay? If you say it
Let's go.
and you get it wrong, then the other person has as long as they want to answer. So just keep that in mind so you don't rush your answers thinking that you're going to take it. Okay. This first one's tough, but I'm curious if you guys know. What year was the first Marvel comic released?
Is this closest to the answer? Or do you have to be
No, it
right
has
on?
to be right on. It's kind of a shot in the dark, but
1916.
wow. Jared?
1915.
Is that Okay. Now you're both wrong. It's 1949, actually. But some good guesses. All right. What was Marvel Comics originally called when it was conceived? It was not called Marvel Comics. It had another name.
I know what DC's was.
I have no clue.
Marvel graphic books.
Nope. It was actually called Timely Publications.
Jeez,
So-
these are hard.
Yeah, those first two are hard. I'm sorry. But I think this next one you might be able to get. In the comic The Death of Superman, what being kills Superman with his fists?
Doomsday.
Doomsday it is. All right, Jared gets 1 point.
It's in the movie.
1 point for Jared. There's another character who is bitten by the radioactive spider that gave Spider-Man his powers.
Venom.
No.
Damn it.
Who is the character? I'll take the super name or the person's alter ego.
Miles Morales.
Nope. It's actually Cindy Moon, also known as Silk.
Oh, wow.
All right. What is Alfred's last name?
Buttersworth.
You say Buttersworth?
No, I said Pennyworth.
What did you actually say?
I said Pennyworth.
It is Pennyworth. I thought you said Buttersworth.
No, why would I
sorry.
say Buttersworth?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not like he just said it into a microphone that we'll be able to listen to later.
Yeah, Joe, that would be so dumb. All right, next question.
I hope for your sake you actually said Pennyworth. Okay. Well, I guess that puts Jared at 2 points.
Come on.
Okay. Batgirl was shot by the Joker and became paraplegic and became a computer expert known as what superhero name?
Oracle.
Yes, it is Oracle. Wow.
What? How do you know that?
Hey,
Was that a quick Google search?
no,
sending him-
I know
I'm sending
it
him
from
secret
the. I
information.
know it
I'm
from the
impressed you
Arkham
knew that
games.
one.
I knew it from the Arkham games.
Wow. Well
Wow,
done.
A sweep. Congratulations, Jared.
He got
Well
one.
done, Jared.
Dang, Jared.
Got a W.
The debate and the trivia.
Congratulations.
Congrats,
I
Jared.
do have 2 more questions that I think I'm curious if anybody knows. Jason Todd was killed by the Joker and resurrected in a Lazarus pit as what character?
Red Hood.
Red Hood?
The Red Hood,
Yep.
yes. And what is Deadpool's name, real name?
Wade Wilson.
Ryan Reynolds.
Well, Wade Wilson. All right. Well done.
Cool. All right. Thanks for judging, Joseph.
You're welcome.
Great job.
And thanks for being on, Joey.
You're welcome.
I hope you had fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Continue to leave likes, comments, replies on our social media posts. Every interaction helps to expand our audience to new listeners. And most importantly, leave a rating and review on iTunes. It really helps out the show. And maybe one day we'll get on the front page of the iTunes podcast application. Woo! That's all. Thanks, Joey, for being here. And to the rest of the Jays, I was outnumbered
All the
today.
J's.
Okay, tune in 2 weeks from this Friday. We'll be back with another episode. We will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. So long.
Thanks for listening to Hostel Discourse. Subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. And check out our other social media accounts linked in the show notes. Join us next time for more inexhaustible debate over the most questionable of topics.